What a day, what a day. Just giving everybody a chance to come on in. Hello, 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 welcome. It is lovely to see you. I'm going to give people the chance to get the notifications, to get themselves ready and come on in. And then we will get started talking about your 3 emotional brains. And how they relate to emotional boundaries. Yeah, good stuff. Say hello in the chat. If you have a minute, let me know who you are and that you are here. Hello, hello, hello. Come on in. I am super excited about today's topic. Boundaries in the brain, the 3 emotional brains, and doing a Q&A for, hello, Kucky Sander. Lovely to see you. Super excited about this today. Especially cuckolding really can use some good talks on boundaries and how to set boundaries so that you can be as successful as possible. Because I will tell you that for me, my relationship thrives with both of us having excellent boundaries. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Hello, Cobalt. Lovely to see you. Thank you for joining me today. Okay, since we are starting to, see the notifications going out and people coming on in. Hello, Panati. Good to see you. Lovely to have you. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start the introduction, and then we will get on with things. So here we go. Hello, I'm Heather. Most people call me Nookie. In addition to living an amazing personal life, I write books, I teach workshops, I travel and teach classes about love, sex, romance, and kink for people of all genders, relationship statuses, orientations, and more. I've always been curious and adventurous when it comes to sex, and luckily I've had partners who've been the same. So I've explored many facets of sexuality in loving and creative ways. All of my experiences thus far have led me to the belief that boundaries are the key to not only saving ourselves, but our relationships. They are what take us from getting by or merely average to healthy, loving, strong, and fan-fucking-tastic. So let's get started. Okay, so today I would like to share with you some of the things that I've been working on in my boundaries book. I spent some time this past week, the last weekend, and then this week, focused in on emotional boundaries. And hello, Womanopolis. I'm doing well, thank you. And I wrote a lot about emotional boundaries. In fact, I wrote so much that I took some of that and I actually moved it over to an entirely different chapter because there's so much to say about emotional boundaries. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about was your 3 emotional brains. Now, sometimes I bring this up and everybody's like, oh yeah, sure. I've totally heard of the 3 emotional brains. And other people are like, what? 3 brains? What? What are you talking about? And no, I'm not talking about this brain and that brain. I'm talking about the 3 brains, the 3 emotional drives that we have in our brains. So We have our safe brain, our threat brain, and our drive brain. And that's what I'm going to give an overview of today. And then I'm going to be taking your questions about those three brains and about emotional boundaries. Are y'all with me? Super excited. So let's talk a little bit about the three brains. The thing that's important to know here is that our drive brain is celebrated. It is desired. It is made much of in everything. Our drive brain is what leads us to compete with others, for example. It was what leads us to achievement, right? To success. Our safe brain is the most overlooked. That's the part that, people sort of like, you don't really need that. It's not really that important to me. It is not made much of in modern culture. And when people do talk about it, a lot of people consider them sort of woo-woo. Cucky says, freeze, run, or fight. Yes. So freeze, we call it here in the US, we call it the 5 Fs. Freeze, fight, flight, flop, or friend, the 5 Fs. And all of those are related to threat brain. Threat brain is when you feel unsafe. That is what takes over your brain. Here's something interesting, though, that a lot of people really think about when it comes to mental health, boundaries, and threat brain. Most, if not all, of our mental challenges, interpersonal challenges, and so on and so forth are a result of an overactive threat brain, right? It's a result of feeling threatened, feeling fear when we don't need to, or feeling more threatened or more fear than we need to for survival. So Cobalt says, what is it when you become like a superhero, like turning over cars and shit, like to save someone? Yeah, exactly. So an overactive threat brain can flood our bodies with adrenaline, right? So that would be a fight response. The turning over cars and so on and so forth is the fight. You're going to rush full of chemicals and get active against whatever the threat is, right? But here's the thing, like an overactive threat brain will flood us with not just powerful feelings and thoughts, but will flood us with those chemicals that literally make us feel as if we are under attack, as if we are in danger. And our brains have evolved over thousands of years to protect us from that. And so they will react. So let's talk about these three brains real quick. Let's just go into them. Threat brain, our oldest motivation system. It's also the most powerful. The threat brain can literally overwhelm either of the other two brains because it's all about survival, right? So it takes up a disproportionate amount of mental and physical energy because it's there to recognize and respond to danger, right? The safe brain, however, is the least celebrated, the least paid attention to. That is the brain that is responsible for calm in our lives, right? So it is the brain that is responsible for our relaxation. It is rest, it is recovery. The safe brain is how we form relationships. It is essential, but it is also often understimulated because it's like, oh, I don't need to waste my time, navel gazing and being all woo woo. I got things to do. I got drive brain to take care of, right? Chris D. Hello, if you have a long physiology talk with someone to help them, how would you vent or relax the brain after such personal and mental talk? Ooh, that's a great question. We were actually just talking about this. I run a local server and we have a wellness channel in there, and we have somebody who's been talking about mental health wellness. And that was actually a question that came up, focusing in on how do we recenter and balance ourselves when we are all threat brained up, right? Because what you're talking about here is when somebody else is in crises and they speak with you, especially if you are empathic or you don't have super excellent, strong emotional boundaries, will take their emotions on. You will take on some of that threat, right? So, how do we self soothe? How do we recenter? How do we balance if we have taken on some of somebody else's threat, or if we have threat of our own, right? And again, let me be clear, that threat does not have to be actual physical danger. It can be a memory that triggers us. It can be anxiety that gets us going down the wrong path. So let's talk a little bit about recentering, recalming, finding that space. First, one of the things that's really important, critically important, is having good boundaries. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this right now. Of course, I'm writing a book about boundaries, but the boundaries are literally designed, or rather, we design them for ourselves when we do them right, to help us know what emotions and feelings are ours and what are theirs. So we can get all worked up with our friends, but with good boundaries, we can also set that aside when the time comes. However, let's say we're in between there and where we are now, right? Like we're trying to figure out how to get to the point where we can simply set that aside. So here are some of the things you can do, and it's different for everyone. But think about your love languages, for example. Think about what makes you feel safe and loved. For example, if one of your love languages is touch, self soothing, just touching yourself, maybe putting on lotion, dry brushing your skin, taking a hot shower is amazing, relaxing, sensual touch, especially taking a hot shower and then laying down for a few minutes. Your body will go from hot to cool, which is actually one of the primary ways that we fall asleep. That is a very relaxing sensation, right? Or perhaps you're more into words of affirmation, listening to upbeat music and chilling. That could help. If you are into quality time, maybe spend some quality time with a good friend who's super chill. They're going to help, cheer you up, or spend some time with an animal. Cats, dogs, pets in general have been known to reduce our stress. Yes, soft fabrics like satin, texture. I'm on a velvet couch. Sometimes just reaching out and touching the velvet will do it, right? If you're into acts of service, doing service for yourself, drawing a bubble bath, and not just taking the bath, but the act of focusing on drawing the most perfect bubble bath that you can. Nice, healthy food. Be careful, though, about eating or drinking when stressed, because that in and of itself can become an abnormal stress response that some people then do to excess, right? So eating will almost always calm us a bit. But if that becomes the response, eating, especially when we're not hungry, but only when we're stressed, then that becomes an issue in and of itself, right? Chocolate is another good one. Very, very good to reduce stress. Not so good sometimes for the waistline if that's something that you're concerned about, right? Other things, journaling, just writing things down. Doodling can help. For me, I've actually recently realized I used to go for a walk. I used to put some music on and go for a walk. Now I've actually discovered that I still love going for a long walk, especially hiking in the woods, but I don't put any music on at all. I allow my brain to just process through everything, and that calms me down, right? Because I'm doing activity. Exercise is a great way to burn off extra adrenaline or threat stress. And for me, not listening to music actually allows my brain to process through things, sort through things while I'm enjoying a lovely hike and get that out as well. So everybody's going to be different. Cobalt says, I've heard singing can reset the vagus nerve. I have not heard of that, but if that's something that any of you would be interested in, singing to reset the vagus nerve, then absolutely look that up and see. I sing a lot. My partner sings a lot. You can give us a snippet of something and we will just start singing. We're not good at it, but hey, it's really fun. Cucky says, I used to overeat and gained 45 kilograms overweight, but keto and mindfulness helped me to lose. Excellent. Excellent. And that's awesome. So that's something else is that, again, be careful about using eating to correct any stress or in response to threat brain. What about masturbating or masturbation? Absolutely. So one of the things that is really interesting about orgasm specifically is that orgasm in the creation of orgasm is actually defined as a release of stress. So in masturbating, you're actually building up physical tension, pleasure, and then orgasm releases that, and your body essentially depresses. It loses tension. It relaxes. That can immediately put you into safe brain. Again, the challenge is, though, using that as your go-to for relaxation. They say that it cannot be addictive, actually, but it can become a habitual pattern of behavior. And we want to be careful about that, right? We want to be careful about what we are replacing or what we are using to displace stress and not make it something that we might begin to overuse, or at least be careful about overuse of things like masturbation, eating, drinking, drugs, right? Even, like gaming can become problematic if it's done too much, or retreating from the world into, television shows or whatever. So we want to be careful that whatever we choose, we have enough variety that we don't focus in on just one option that might become unhealthy for us. So, Chris, I help a lot of people with personal talk, and I sure take a toll after a long talk, mainly if I went deep into their mind using psychology. Absolutely. I mean, that is, again, people who are good at that sort of thing, people who people tend to come to are often, not always, but often empathic people. And empathic people, those who are able to put themselves in others' shoes, those who are able to feel the feelings of others, are often really, really challenged when it comes to setting good boundaries. So it's important to keep an eye on that and make sure that you are making yourself a priority as well. One of the sections in the book I'm working on actually is called the Prime Directive, Boundaries in Relationships. And the Prime Directive is putting yourself first, making sure that you are well taken care of in all of your relationships. And that's pretty critical, right? And finding the sweet spot, which again, I talk about in there, which sweet spot is one of my favorite expressions. It's a Venn diagram. This is what you want. This is what I want. And this overlap here in the center, that's the sweet spot for our relationship. That's where we do sexy playtimes. That's where we make plans. That's where we do things together. And the rest of it is where our boundaries protect us and where we choose to do things on our own. So there you go. So going back to the brain. So we've talked about safe brain, right? Quiet, calm, spending time recuperating and relaxing. Okay. Threat brain, we've already talked about that. Woo, that's danger. That's something that we need to fight. We need to flight. We need to freeze. We need to flee. No, we need to friend or we need to flop. Too many F's. Then there is also drive brain. And drive brain is what we tend to really, really admire in others. The drive brain is what motivates us to seek new things out, to narrow our attention, to focus in on whatever we happen to be pursuing. It's pleasure when we overcome or achieve. It is deep, powerful cravings for dopamine. It's all about accumulating and achieving and winning and rank and status and competitiveness. But here's the thing. Here's something a lot of people don't know or don't think about. Anticipation of accomplishment is pleasurable to us. So imagining that we are achieving success will dump dopamine into our systems in the same way that actually achieving success does. Tricky, tricky, tricky. So the safe brain is kind of left over in a corner. A lot of people don't want to spend their time doing meditation or journaling or all that like woo-woo, like silly stuff. We want to be out there. We want to be fighting for what we want. We want to be achieving things. We want to be successful. But we need the balance. Okay. So let's see what we've got here as far as comments, and then we're going to talk some more. Kylie, I have not actually written the book, but I am writing the book. In fact, I am live writing the book. And if you would like to join us, I can give you a link. Give me just 1 second. I have it somewhere. Oh, I was not prepared for this. I'll get that for you in just a second. I am actually writing a book all about boundaries. And in addition to writing it, I'm writing it live in front of everyone who wants to join me right now. You can read the chapters as I post them. You can give feedback. You can ask questions. Cobalt is in there, asking questions on their journey to where he wants to go and exploring the different aspects of boundaries. So let me pop that link in there. And this doesn't cost anything. This is totally free. It's just a way to get in and sort of give me feedback on what I think is a really important book for me to be writing. And then for everyone who is in the live write, you'll get access to the book when it is published, free. I'll ask you to review it on your favorite book site, wherever it's sold, and you'll get a discount. If you're interested, you won't have to be, but if you're interested, you'll get a discount on the workshop that I'm putting together. So I've been saying that the book is like a deep dive into boundaries, into what they are and why we need them and how to do them better. And the workshop is like, buckle up, bitches, we're doing boundaries, which for those people who maybe like to have a little bit more hand holding, like to have somebody there to like walk them through the process of actually creating the boundary and living it, that's what the workshop is. So there you go. Okay. So yes, solving puzzles is absolutely a challenge of drive brain, cobalt, for sure. 100%. Okay, I'm going to take a quick drink here. Talking is thirsty work. So let's go back to these 3 emotional brains, because now that you know that they're there, I'm sure that you can start looking at the things you do and fitting them into the categories. What comes from your safe brain, right? What are the activities that come from your safe brain? And what activities do you do that put you in safe brain? What is your threat brain? What comes from your threat brain, right? How does your threat brain react to certain things? And then what activities do you do that are more likely to put you into threat brain? And then drive brain. What makes you want to achieve, to accomplish, to compete? And what do you do to fulfill that brain when that brain is active, right? If you start looking at your life, you're going to see the push and pull, the tug and response from all of these 3 brains. And if you're anything like, 98%, I'm pulling that number like out of my ass, but 98% of humans, you're going to start to realize that your threat brain is overactive, right? Your drive brain is where you really focus and want to get more out of, and your safe brain is pretty neglected. Even if you've been trying to do the work, even if you've been focused in on self-care, right? Because the safe brain takes a long time to build up. And it's literally the most important one to good mental health, to have that balance, right? So let's talk about something really, really interesting. Threat brain and drive brain, and how those 2 work together to cut safe brain out entirely, right? Like safe brain is left like standing on the corner while threat brain and drive brain, ride off into the sunset together. And that will cause you a metric fuck ton of trouble. So let's talk about how this works. Threat brain, drive brain, right? So the threat-based drive is what really kerfuffles us, right? So let's say that you feel a threat. Um, maybe it's not even, again, it's not an external threat, it's an internal threat. What's a good threat? I feel unlovable, right? This is a threat. And if any of you have ever had an internal threat like this, I feel unlovable, I'm not good enough, I'm insecure, I'm ugly, right? Any of these things, internal threats. So let's just say you're sitting around on a perfectly nice day and this internal threat triggers threat brain. Okay. Now, you actually have two primary choices here to deal with that. The first choice is go to safe brain. Do things that nourish your safe brain and take you back there. The challenge with that is most people don't really know how to go to safe brain. They don't know how to calm themselves down. They don't know how to recenter themselves. So, choice number one, not really a choice at all. Yeah. So instead, they go to what's behind door number two, which is drive brain. Tell me if you've heard this one before. I'm not good enough. I'm ugly and fat. Yeah. But I know if I go into drive brain, I can do something about that. I can be less fat, right? Now, this could be fat, this could be poor, this could be unpopular or unfunny or whatever, but I can do something about this. So I've had a threat. I feel this way. I feel unlovable because I'm fat. So I go into drive brain and I say, I can do something about the fat. I am going to lose weight. And as soon as you engage drive brain, you start to feel good because you are solving the problem. You have not solved the problem. That's the challenge with drive brain, is thinking about the problem being solved feels good. Not doing anything about it necessarily, thinking about it. So you start thinking about how good it will feel to solve that problem. And your threat brain starts going away because you're like, got it. I know the answer. Threat brain starts going away. Drive brain takes over, says, yes, I feel good about this. I'm going to lose weight. Problem solved, right? Ever? Because we are human, we'll get super excited about whatever that solution is, and we'll start it, and then we'll fail. Not necessarily even a big fail. Maybe just one day we'll have a milkshake that we say to ourselves we shouldn't have, right? And what do you think happens as soon as you stumble, as soon as you take that little mistake and recognize it? Kucky says, imagine that you are good or successful. How about coping behavior? And so we think we can overcome internal threats with drive, but we can't. Cobalt. Exactly. So we have a threat. We say, I can do this. And we plan it out in our head and we feel good about it and we get it started. And then we make that first mistake. What happens? Shame, Cobalt says. Failure. And what do you think? What brain do shame and failure belong to? Is it your drive brain? It's not your safe brain, right? So we're dumped right back into threat brain. Exactly, Cobalt. So what do? We start that all over again, right? Threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive. And safe brain is over here going, what about me, folks? What about me? Threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive, threat, drive. Now, Kucky says, but we can change our thoughts. Yes. Yes, we can. Absolutely. And one of the best ways to change our thoughts in a situation like that is to build up our safe brain. It's like a muscle, right? And Kucky, you said your safe brain is 30%, your threat brain is 20%, your drive is 50%. That's actually not too terribly bad, if that's what you think. However, if your threat brain is only 20%, how powerful is that 20% in certain situations, right? Because there are many of us who are super balanced in everything except like our love relationships, right? So many people out there have their shit together, except in connecting with others and creating a fulfilling, healthy relationship or relationships, right? Friendships, family, lovers, even children. And boundaries can help. You must change how you're running in circles. Absolutely. The thing is, though, in order to change, we have to recognize the cycle and choose to stop it. Drive brain keeps us alive. Actually, threat brain keeps us alive. Drive brain keeps us trying for more, right? It keeps us wanting more than we have. If you look at the continuum of contentment and discontent, safe brain is contentment, drive brain is discontent, or the idea that there's more that I can have and want, and in some cases crave and need, right? Cobalt says, I can count on one hand the times I've felt truly safe. So that suggests two things. One, you need to become a safe space for yourself, whatever that means, however that works. Part of that, and yes, I am absolutely biased and I am fully cognizant of the fact, part of that is creating better boundaries, because creating and maintaining our boundaries is how we keep ourselves safe. And it's how we determine what we will allow to affect us. Kucky says, I started to love myself with all my faults. Beautiful, right? Because that's an ideal, and that makes safe brain a good place for us to go and to be. And Kucky says, hallelujah, I want more, as do I. Here's the thing, though. Drive brain can be just like any other addiction. It can overtake us, right? It can make us want more even when we have more and more than enough. And at some point, that drive is unhealthy. We want balance. We want to both feel safe and to strive for challenge, or against challenge, rather. Right? We want those things to balance out in our lives so that we are the best people we can be. Also, here's something to keep in mind, and Cobalt, this will go right to you, and it's part of what I'm writing about in the book. I haven't actually gotten to this part yet, but one of the reasons I'm talking about threat brain and drive brain and safe brain is because once you set boundaries, you have to maintain them. And when threat brain takes over, pushes drive brain and safe brain out of the way, when threat brain takes over, it is incredibly difficult by a magnitude of thousands to maintain boundaries. Ethics and boundaries are gray areas. They're things that take thought. And when threat brain takes over, you've got the 5 F's: fight, flight, freeze, friend, or flop. That is why in the book about boundaries, I'm also going to talk to you about threat brain, about crisis, and how it depresses our brain, and how to use rules and laws to help you get through the crisis, to help you maintain your boundaries. Because I believe that is a key that is missing in a lot of discussions about boundaries. What do we do when we are in crisis? How do we maintain those boundaries when we are in fight, flight, freeze, friend, or flop mode? Right? Chris, this is so true. Yet to the last comment, live with my faults. There is no faults in life, only actions and acknowledgement that we as human beings took the initiative. Either way, our action goes. Yeah, I mean, sure. And I think that that's really important to consider. I personally feel, and this is me, I feel that acknowledging that I have faults is a strength for me. Now, some people say these are not faults, these are how humans are different, right? That's okay too. It's important to understand that we're all going to use language differently. And as long as we are applying it to ourselves, we can use it how we want, right? We can use it in the way that feels most comfortable. Now, if I were to speaking to you, Chris, in a conversation, I might not use the word fault, knowing how you feel about it, and that, you don't feel that there are faults in life. And that is part of the dance of communication and learning each other's language that is critically important in relationships. And then to complete that, either way our action goes, be confident and accept all results no matter what. We only improve from the past. We must seek experience. I agree. And that is why in the boundaries book that I'm writing, one of the last sections is an appendices talking about no regrets and how to live a no regrets lifestyle. And that's actually going to be a module, a bonus module in the workshop, the Take No Shit workshop, which is all about, building those boundaries, is going to be how do we live a life of no regrets. And that means reframing how we look at the choices that we are given in life and the actions that we take, plus the results. So, yeah. Cucky, actually, because I'm using my drive, I feed my save because I'm submissive and masochistic. The problem was my Stockholm syndrome, where I needed to set healthy boundaries for me. That is awesome. And that's a key, right? A lot of people have challenges with setting boundaries. So many challenges. Like, we're not taught boundaries growing up. And in fact, we're often taught the exact opposite. We are taught we should not have boundaries, that people will not love us as much if we have boundaries, that we're being intractable or unkind if we enforce our boundaries. And that is just not true. Cucky says, faults are my challenges. Absolutely. I personally, some of my faults are definitely challenges to overcome. Some of them, they are what they are. I'm okay with this. I've got other things to think about, and I'm not concerned about them being faults even, because as far as I'm concerned, every human has something, right? And I allow myself to try and fail again better. Yeah. Cobalt says, I have no confidence in myself. So I think that you have already been through the chapter where we talk about, or rather, I talk about, I use the we a lot, like the royal we, I don't know, or the we as in you, all the people reading the book, and me, I don't know. Anyway, I use we a lot, and I'm trying, I am attempting to use I more often. So I am pretty sure that you, Cobalt, have gotten past the chapter in which I talk about how good boundaries and trust, especially self-trust, are interlinked, entangled, intertwined. So in order to trust yourself, in order to have faith in yourself, in order to have confidence in yourself, start setting a boundary. One boundary at a time, two boundaries. Set in the workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on 5 boundaries, 3 to 5 boundaries. Just 3 to 5. There are probably hundreds of thousands that you can choose from. We're going to start with 3 to 5 that you think will make a big difference, or that you think you can tackle right now in your current situation. And we're going to build those boundaries out. We're going to create the rules and laws you need to maintain those boundaries, even in crisis, right? And then we are going to put them into practice together as a workshop, as a group. We're going to share what we're doing with those boundaries and how we set them and what we said and what results we got. And we're going to talk with each other about how to get better, right? Super, super exciting. Lying is avoiding the truth and fleeing your responsibilities. So I've actually written quite a bit about lies and lying in the past. And one of the things I talk about is that lying is a submissive behavior. And when I say a submissive behavior, I don't mean submissives lie. Like in the BDSM lifestyle, you've got dominance, you've got submissives, you've got masters, you've got slaves. I don't mean submissives lie. I mean that lying regardless of how you identify in kink or not, is a submissive behavior in that when we lie, we are admitting two things. One, that we have fear. Lying is a result of fear, unless you're super psychotic. And two, that we cannot get what we want out of a situation using the truth. That is what lying is. That said, humans lie. And there is absolutely a chapter in the book that is going to be all about lies and lying and talking about how do we set our own boundaries around lies and lying. What will we accept? What won't we accept? Why do people lie? And does it matter why they lie if they lie to us? Does it change how our boundary functions? Chris says, Cobalt, self-love is the answer for your situation. Look in the mirror and talk to yourself where you express all your feelings you wanted to share, but can't tell, and make a decision to make it happen. Absolutely. Now, keep in mind, Chris, that Cobalt has had a lot of trauma in their lives. And I know this because they are part of the Boundaries Workshop or the Boundaries Live Right, and they've been in other workshops of mine before. So understand that in some cases, it's going to take longer for people to get to the same stages. Some people will get to certain stages very quickly. Some people will take a very long time. And part of that is, our emotional resiliency. Part of it is our previous experiences, the life that we've lived, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cobalt says, lying is kind of like when a cat lays on its back looking receptive, but then attacks. So interestingly enough, I would say that's not exactly the truth, because here's the thing. So cats love to be petted on their bellies. It's it's a lizard brain instinct. It has to do with like kittens and nuzzling and snuggling and so on and so forth. Their tummies are super sensitive. But they are also easily overstimulated. And when cats are overstimulated, their threat brain kicks in and they can't help themselves. They immediately start grabbing and kicking, right? So they're lying, but they don't mean to. They really do want to be petted. And I imagine, now this is anthropomorphizing to the highest degree, I imagine that many of those cats are like, this time, I won't. Oh, damn, there it goes again, right? Sort of like the scorpion and the frog. But yes, 3 to 5 boundaries is a real harness to protect ourselves. However, it's just the beginning. There are so many boundaries. I mean, in the book and in the workshop as well, I talk about the 6 types of boundaries, where we've got sexual boundaries. I've written that chapter. Emotional boundaries. I've written that chapter. Physical boundaries, time boundaries, intellectual boundaries, and material boundaries. It's a lot of boundaries. But some of them you probably already have in place and you already are good at them. We just need to shore up the boundaries that you don't yet have, or maybe where you're not so good at maintaining them, right? So, yeah. Do we have any other questions about boundaries, about emotional boundaries specifically, about threat brain, safe brain, drive brain? Next week, I will have 2 events on Tuesday and Thursday. So on Tuesdays, I'm going to be doing noon on the East Coast. And on Thursdays, I'll be doing 2 on the East Coast, just like I did today. Kucky, you mentioned financial boundaries. I lump that in with material boundaries. So material boundaries are like finances, things that you own, things that you claim, that type of thing. So, Womanopolis, you say, I am thinking about anger. What are you thinking about anger? So again, I do want to bring up the live write and what goes on there. So let's see. I'm going to grab that next. That link for you again. There you go. There is the link. And where are we here? Fantastic. Womanopolis, if you have, a question about anger, please do bring it up. So with the live write, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, I am writing my new book, Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck is the working title, right now. And you can access the chapters as I write and post them. I'm putting them up in both written format and in quick audio format. Like I'll just read the chapter off, and if I stumble over something or I think things aren't worded right, I'll go back and correct myself there in the audio. It's not edited really at all, but it is up there so that you can listen. If maybe you are a commuter, you like to listen to podcasts in your car, the audio files are there for you. So yeah. How could I become angry at some point? So I'm not quite sure. So angry, let's tie this into what I'm talking about here and see if this answers your question. So you've got your 3 emotional brains, right? You've got your safe brain, you've got your drive brain, and then you've got your threat brain. Your threat brain actually is what will often respond in anger. Again, you've got your 5 F's in English. So you've got your fight, that's anger right there. Flight, freeze, friend, or flop. Fight. The fight response, that is your anger. That is a response to threat, right? So when you feel threatened, you might get angry. Anger is also often a direct response when you feel that your expectations and standards have not been met. So whenever you feel angry, if you sort of like dig down into what you're angry about, it is related to an expectation that someone else did not meet. It's like a disappointment, a frustration, even bigger. Like you're not just sad that they didn't meet this expectation, you're angry because they didn't meet it, and they didn't meet it in a way that really exacerbates or heightens your emotions. Kucky says, what about kink or BDSM boundaries? Because I don't seem to have found my maximum boundary. I always want to explore more. Well, so when it comes to those sorts of boundaries, what I would say is this. Like some people are going to be very clear. They know exactly what their boundary is going to be. Other people, not so much. Like there might always be more around the bend. So what I would suggest is say, I would like to explore further. Here is how I will give feedback. Like, so for example, you've got the stoplight system. Maybe you're familiar with it. Red, stop, now. There is something going wrong, right? Yellow, pause or slow down and check in. This is a warning. There is something potentially not as good as it could be, right? Green, go, 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 I am fine. Some people also add in the color blue, which is, this is amazing. Do more of that. But you can use whatever words work for you. The key is being able to communicate that to whomever you're doing whatever with as you're doing it. So part of maintaining your personal boundaries is knowing that the other person will understand the communication that you give and will honor it, right? So that's trusting them. So Chris says, sometimes I do have an emotional imbalance. I will need to read the book and learn how to set my mental boundaries to know to give a mean, angry face. Yeah, I mean, so the main thing about boundaries to understand is that, and I say this in the book, in one of the chapters that's already completed, these are not a magical suit of armor. They will not protect you from everything, but they will allow you to protect yourself from a lot of things. And that will give you more room. You'll protect yourself from a lot of the nasty stuff. It'll give you more room for the really awesome stuff. And this is critical, having good boundaries and getting rid of all of that, like that nasty little detritus that we put up with in life with poor boundaries, frees your brain to handle bigger boundary issues and bigger crises more effectively. Oh my gosh. And I just thought of something else that I should probably include in the book, which, by the way, so here's the thing about the book that I realized the other day. I am writing so much, right? And I want to get all of this information into your hands. But if I just shove all of this information into your hands, it's not going to read well. So what I do is I normally, I build this outline. I showed that a little bit last week, this outline. And then I just go through and I write from the outline. But in this case, in the live write that I'm doing, I'm actually overwriting. I am shoving it all in there. I am writing. I am making everything that I could possibly say, I am putting it into the book. So the next stage, once I get that part of the writing done, is I'm going to go through and I'm going to edit the book so that it is more readable and less totally geeky. So right now, everybody in there is getting the overwrite. What I'm going to do with the book is once I edit it down, I'm going to take some of that information and I'm going to create an online portal, I guess, for the book to shove in a bunch of that information. So in the book itself, in the chapters, it will say, if you want to know more about XYZ, go to the online portal and there's more information there. So, but I went and got this link for you. For those of you who are interested, from my Dating Kinky site. It's When Good People Snap. And it talks about the idea of reaching your bite point, right? And it talks about how reaching that bite point can be a lot of little itty bitty tiny things that all add up. That's perfect to go with boundaries, because when you start setting good boundaries, a lot of those itty bitty tiny things that people do that drive you like just mildly insane, they start to disappear. So you have more room to be resilient for other things. You have more energy. You have more mental processing process space. You have more spoons by setting boundaries. So, boundaries only protect you if the person you are dealing with is honorable. Ish. Here's the thing, though. Yes, there are some really bad people out there, really bad. And some of them, you're never going to figure it out until, bam, they get you, right? But that's like 1 in 10,000. Most people, you're going to get fair warning. They're going to kick your boundary a little bit. They're going to elbow it a little bit. They're going to push against it. They are going to cross your boundaries over and over and over again before they do that thing that you absolutely cannot live with any longer. Most people will be like that. And I'll tell you this is what I've learned in my life. When I start setting boundaries for myself and I start enforcing them across the board, even when I just meet somebody, 90% of the bad people see themselves out of my life because I am not giving off the right signals as a victim. I am showing them that they will not get to push my boundaries willy-nilly, and they will take themselves out of my life very effectively. I'm not sure, Roger, if you were on, I think Cobalt was on a month or two ago when I was talking about something, and there was a man who came on to the YouTube live and said, "You sound like a really difficult woman to date." And I said, "Yes, I am. Thank you so much for noticing." That one statement to me was enough to know that that person would not be able to meet my boundaries. That statement was enough to know that that person, even though I had not interacted with them yet at all, had already determined that my boundaries were too much for them. And you know what I call that? A fucking success. Right? Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. I don't get to say that very often. Like, I've got no reason to say that, but that is a perfect example, right? I don't cater to people who might cause me daily stress. And I hope you don't either. And that's why I'll keep talking about boundaries, is because I would love for you to not have to deal with that daily stress from people that you can choose to not have in your life. Mm-hmm. And you can reduce it from the people that you might have to have in your life. And by have to, I mean the people that you really want in your life, even though they pissed you the fuck off. So you just limit them. Yeah. Womanopolis asks, do you have a PhD? The answer is no. I do not have a PhD. In fact, I will be very clear. I do not even have a full college education. I quit high school in my sophomore year. I got my GED. I did some college. I hitchhiked across the country. I have, though, spent a lot of time learning about myself and how I fit into the world, and researching and reading everything from pop psychology to scientific studies to papers. I have read over 500 books on love, sex, romance, and kink. I am infinitely curious, and I tend to look at things in a way that is slightly different than other people, and I have a skill for presenting them to people in ways that they can really grasp onto and understand. Or so I've been told. People have told me that, the things I teach them change their lives. And I love to be that positive influence. I also suggest that you never ever take one person as the only source. I suggest that you always go and you do your own research, and more importantly, you find what works for you, right? Because what works for me, even if it works for 99% of other humans, may not work for you for whatever reason. So take what I say and then do your own research. Explore. See if you can find more, or if you can prove me wrong. So autodidact, absolutely, Kucky. College is supposed to teach you to think. Instead, it teaches you to think like them. So interestingly, my father, speaking of PhD, my father has a PhD. And one of the things that my father always said is that liberal arts degrees teach you how to think. And, I grew up with that around the house. So I'd like to think that maybe I absorbed some of that, like how to think and how to look at the world through him. Okay, so I don't see any additional questions on emotional boundaries or the three brains. So I'm going to close this for today. Thank you. Thank you again for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I'm Nookie, or Heather Claus. I am currently writing my next book. Working title is Boundaries Are Sexy as Fuck. I'm going to pop that link right in there again one more time and put that up on the screen. If you would like to join the live write, if you would like to be a part of this live write and to read the book as it's being built and watch me go through the process and get your questions answered in the discussions and in the forums, please do join me. It doesn't cost anything, and I would love to have you. Thank you all.